All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the drive-thru. Shout out to school, I guess. All right, 8-2, bless you. The reciprocal function. You know that word reciprocal from when you used to multiply and divide fractions, okay? Reciprocal is when you do 1 divided by something or when you flip the fraction. Bless you. Okay? All right, some words. X-intercept. It's where the graph hits the x-axis. Okay? How do you find the x-intercept? You plug in 0 for, do you remember which letter you plug it in for? For y. Yep. Okay? So to find the y-intercept, you plug in 0 for x. Okay? Asymptotes. Asymptotes are these lines on a graph that don't exist, but they're boundaries. It's like our curve is almost going to get to the asymptote. So if you remember when we did exponential functions, you might have like something like that, and this right here was our asymptote. It was never going to be 0, it was just going to get very close to it. Okay, that's what asymptote means. And then once again, domain and range. Okay, they keep showing up. Domain is all your possible input values. In algebra 2, our input is almost always x. We put in x, we pop out y. Okay? Our range is your possible y values. So, this video won't be much longer than this. If you get confused, you might want to just go back and watch this beginning again, just to remind yourself of what these words mean. So here's our first start. Graph y equals 8 over x, and then identify these things. Okay? After the video, we're going to go back, we're going to open up our graphing calculator, and we're going to show you how to do this in the graphing calculator. But on the video, we're going to treat this like we don't have a graphing calculator. Okay, so real quick. Oh no. Oh dear. Rusty. We're just going to do an input-output table. And I'm actually going to do 2. Okay? And I'm going to pick easy numbers for x. So over here, I'll just pick the positive ones. So like 2, 4, 8. Okay, what if I put in a 2, what do I get? I get a 4. If I put in a 4, I get a 2. If I put it in 8. So let me graph those for you real quick. 2, 4, 4, 2, 8, 1, and it doesn't really give you an idea of what the heck this is going to look like. But let me ask you this. What numbers can I put in for x that make this thing really big? It's weird. Check this out. Anyone know what 8 divided by a half is? It's 16. Very good. It's actually 8 times 2. Okay? What about a fourth? That's right, 32. Okay? So, that might give us a little bit better idea of what's going on. And we're not going to have the opportunity to put a fourth on there. But let's just put one more on there, and let's put 1. And if you put 1, you get an 8. And that gives me an idea of... So now can you see what this looks like? It kind of looks like that exponential growth graph. I don't know why I'm being so picky. Okay? Now, I've got a whole table blank. So, we'll do this one in red, and we're going to do the same numbers but negative. -2, -4, -8, -1/2, and -1. We'll just put those in, and obviously our answer is going to be -4, -2, -1, -16, and -8. And so without taking up too much time, I'm just going to quickly tell you that that's what it's going to look like. Does that make sense? Okay? So now let's answer that's what our graph's going to look like. Now let's answer the question. What's the x-intercept? Okay. I put in a 0 for y. Okay? And you end up getting 0 equals 8 over x. Can I do 8 divided by a number and get 0? I cannot. Okay? So, there is no x-intercept on this. It could never hit the x-axis. And am I allowed to put in 0 for x to find the y-intercept? I am not, because you can't divide anything by 0. So there's no y-intercept for this one. There will be for some, but there's not for this one. So that gives us a good hint to what our asymptotes are. Our asymptotes, then, are these dotted lines, because these are the lines that our graph will approach but never hit. Okay? So you don't exactly have to dot those. I just wanted you to see them. So our asymptotes is this line right here, which is the y-axis, and that's the line x equals 0. Nope. That's a good question, Alex. The asymptote is the line that our graph approaches that it can never get to. No, look, it's going to get closer and closer and closer and closer to the line, but it's never going to get there. Does that make sense? That's a good question. Okay, and so our other asymptote is y equals 0. And those are the equations for the axes, okay? Our domain, what are we allowed to put in for x? Almost everything. That's right. So x cannot equal 0, okay? Or you could write it as x goes from negative infinity. No, just write it like that. X cannot equal 0. Otherwise, it's all reals. And our y's, same thing. Y cannot equal 0. And otherwise, it's all reals, okay? So, now we're going to do one that's just more difficult. And we're not going to do it by hand. We're going to do this one by graphing calculator. So let me pause for... Okay. So, if you don't mind, Jacob, would you hit the lights? So the first thing we got to do is just learn how to type this into our calculator, right? And remember that the bottom of this, you've got like this implied parentheses there. So we want to put in y equals 4 divided by, now we need a parentheses, x minus 2, close them, and then plus 3. Let's graph it. Okay, so can you see that it does look like what we just did? But there's been changes. And so I just wanted to point those changes out before we sketched our graph, okay? Any idea what this plus 3 did to our graph? It does, okay? It makes it go up 3. Do you see that? This thing here has been shifted up from where it was before. How else has it been shifted? It's been shifted up, and how else compared to our original graph? To the right. And you remember how if things are in parentheses, we have this counterintuitive thing that happens? So, this minus 2 actually makes it go right 2. Okay? Got it? And that's really all that you need to learn for today. But I can also, I think, help you with where the asymptotes are. If you notice, let's see. You got an asymptote right here. And well, let's just take a look at our table. You got an asymptote at 2. And then it looks like no matter how high we go, it'll never go past 3. So, I think that teaches us how to find our asymptotes without even using our graphing calculator. Those are your asymptotes. But you got to flip them. So you got to flip this one. So your asymptotes are x equals 2 and y equals 3. Okay? Did I do that right? X equals 2? We'll have to do one more and look. Let's see. Let's just go back to our graph and look. The vertical asymptote would be where we're not allowed putting in for x, right? That's a hole in our graph. And so the vertical asymptote has to be x equals 2. So yeah, this one's vertical. And this one's horizontal. Okay, so just one more slide and we finish. If we've got this general equation, y equals n, n's just a number, divided by x minus h plus k. That's our general equation, okay, where we have gone right h up k with asymptotes at x equals h and y equals k. And that's kind of like the general form for today's lesson. Good to see you guys. Boom!